Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Bo Williams, filling in for Don Hudson. It's been a few weeks since we saw you last, and in that time, a ton of happenings in Tennessee politics. First, a controversy probably no one saw coming, with Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally facing down and surviving a vote of no confidence over his social media activity. McNally drawing criticism after leaving Instagram comments on a nearly naked gay man's pictures, while the legislature worked to limit access to gender-affirming care and tried to put restrictions on drag performances. Now, at one point, one of McNally's fellow Republicans went so far as to describe the lieutenant governor as a predator and call for an investigation. Our state capitol newsroom reporter Chris O'Brien heard from the lawmaker behind that call.
It's time to resign.
Why is that?
You make those, you can tell.
Chapel Hill Republican Representative Todd Warner is calling on Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally to resign. In a release, Warner called McNally a predator for the comments he left on a young man's racy Instagram posts.
Do you have evidence of that, or why do you say that?
And somebody asked, watch the videos, look back at the posts.
Franklin McClure tells us he was 17 years old when McNally first connected with him through social media, but he says McNally didn't know his age.
He wasn't aware of my age, so I wouldn't, flag him on that, but I was 17 at the time.
Republican leaders distanced themselves from Warner after House session Thursday, saying he acted alone in his calls for McNally's resignation.
I don't think he's ever sat down and spoken to Lieutenant Governor in his tenure here, so I find it interesting that you would make a speculation without knowing the person, first of all. That's his opinion. As you can see, he signed it himself. No one else signed on to the letter. So it is what it is.
Democrats point to Warner's ties to a federal bribery and conspiracy investigation into former House Speaker Glenn Cassida and his aide Cade Cothran. McNally called for Cassida to resign amid the 2019 investigation.
I think you need to take a close look at the individual who issued that statement, and I would urge caution on his part. Something along the line of throwing rocks at glass houses.
The Tennessee Journal reports Warner ate dinner with Cothran at a Nashville steakhouse last week.
This has nothing to do with the FBI investigation.
Did Cade Cothran ask you to do this?
No.
We tried to catch up with McNally after Senate session Thursday morning.
Representative Warner is calling on you to resign.
But he didn't answer questions.
Again, that's our Chris O'Brien. Now, Tennessee lawmakers have also been grappling with the fallout from the end of Roe v. Wade. As a matter of fact, Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti sending letters to Walgreens, CVS, and Rite Aid wanting confirmation that an abortion-inducing drug will not be sold. Skrmetti argues that Tennessee has the right to regulate abortion, and under the current near-total ban, state law requires any legal abortion to be performed by a doctor. Walgreens has already stated it will not sell the drug in 20 states, including states that border Tennessee. And the legislature took another step in the debate over exemptions to Tennessee's near-total abortion ban. The state Senate Judiciary Committee voting to move forward with the amended version of what's been dubbed the Right to Life Compromise. You may remember State Senator Richard Briggs backed an earlier, broader version. The newly amended bill adds exemptions for complications like ectopic pregnancies. It allows a doctor to perform a legal abortion if using reasonable medical judgment they feel it was needed to prevent the mother's death. It also keeps threats of suicide or self-harm from being part of those exemptions.
I know I'm just quoting directly from the bill because this is what, what the judgments are going to be made on. And it says, again, the physician shall determine using reasonable medical judgment based upon the facts known to the physician at the time that the abortion was necessary to prevent the death of a pregnant woman. And I do want you to know that I'm using the actual language in the bill, not talking points or my interpretation of talking points. That's the actual, everything I've told you is actual language from the bill.
Senator Briggs, who is a surgeon, there was explaining to State Senator London Lamar how a doctor's judgment would come into play as Lamar offered up hypothetical scenarios like a woman facing chemotherapy treatment.
Senator Briggs' bill in its original form, I could get on board with. It includes the health and the life of the mother. But in fact, this new amended bill only allows you to allow a woman to access an abortion if she's damn near on her deathbed.
When Roe v. Wade was overturned,
of course, we will keep following this issue closely for you. Well, a moment ago, we mentioned some of the measures up for debate affecting LGBTQ people. One of them defines male and female in state law based on a person's anatomy at birth. The bill would prevent anyone, including transgender people, from changing their sex on their birth certificate or driver's license. Adam Mincer was there as it passed the state Senate.
It could cost the state nearly $2 billion in federal funding. But today, Senate Republicans passed a bill defining sex as a person's anatomy at birth.
If defining sex as it has traditionally meant for years in the dictionary cost us federal funds, there's something wrong with Washington, D.C.
Senator Kerry Roberts says his bill is simple. It moves the definition of sex from a section of Tennessee code about school facilities to apply that to all of state law.
We're not trying to pick a fight.
Yet the Tennessee trans community sees it as another attack and a bill that can leave out people born with blended sexual characteristics.
And have really horrifying and just confusing and not understandable consequences.
As a trans man, Henry Seaton says this bill also has an emotional impact.
We continue to send this message over and over again. That's just, we don't want trans people in Tennessee.
He doesn't know what this could do to his health care access, if it'll create more problems for him at the DMV, or make it illegal for him to be around children, considering the language in a new law restricting drag performances.
That definition of male or female impersonator can expand in a way that it wouldn't have been able to before. So it really just solidifies a path to being able to criminalize a trans person.
Senator Roberts dismissed those concerns.
It doesn't have anything to do with transgender. It doesn't have anything to do with LGBTQIA plus or anything.
The bill passed along party lines, with 6 Senate Democrats left wondering if it's worth it.
I don't know why on earth we would take the risk of losing $2 billion of annual federal funding in order to provide a definition that nobody really thinks needs fixing.
I looked at the fiscal note and I just shook my head.
And we've seen progress in the state legislature on a major priority for Governor Bill Lee, transportation upgrades, including a plan that will let drivers willing to pay have the chance of getting to their destination a little quicker. WAT6 On Your Side's Krista Gallant spoke with State Senator Becky Duncan Massey about how these roads would work.
Bottom line is if we don't do anything, it will continue to get worse.
If you're driving to and from work during peak hours, you know traffic can be a nightmare. That's why Governor Bill Lee, along with other lawmakers, have proposed a bill that includes choice lanes.
A number of states have started doing these managed choice lanes and working with public-private partnerships. And what we do is you would have a private partner that would come in and fund, build, design, maintain, and operate choice lanes, which would be additional lanes.
Drivers would pay a fee to use these extra lanes, which, according to Massey, would reduce traffic in existing lanes and allow choice lane users to travel more efficiently during peak traffic times.
You don't have to drive in it if you don't want to. There is a per mile cost, which is 15 to 30 cents a mile, maybe, traditionally, depending upon the traffic. But it takes 30% of the traffic out of the free lanes.
UT's Center for Transportation Research has been working with TDOT to find out what areas would benefit the most from these lanes.
Certainly in the Knoxville area, we see significant congestion from downtown to Farragut, and certainly I think I-40 would be under consideration.
There are several ways these choice lanes can be built. One way could be to create a lane on top of the existing ones.
The challenge is that if you try to expand the interstate outwards, you have to buy land from private owners, and that's a very long process and can be a very costly process. So in some areas, if you look at Texas, for example, they've chosen to move upward.
The bill passed the Senate and is being reviewed in the House Finance Committee. It will then go to the House floor. Massey says if the bill is signed by the governor, it would take around 2 years to complete a study on the project. Then it would go to an environmental study for several years. After that, construction would start, which could take 3 to 4 years. But the end result could mean more revenue to help improve and maintain existing roads.
I think we're going to have maybe some short-term pain while we get to long-term benefits, but we can't do nothing.
Kristen, thank you. Still to come, our panel of pundits coming up next. You're watching Tennessee This Week on WATE 6 On Your Side. All right, welcome back to Tennessee This Week. I'm joined right now by industrial consultant Michael Covington and our political contributor Courtney Piper. First of all, again, great to see you guys. Thanks for taking part. We got a lot to talk about because we've been preempted, so we got to do a little catch up here, if you will. And we're going to start things off with a topic that a lot of people have been talking about. Obviously, Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, he survived the no confidence vote. And this is all, of course, coming back after McNally faced backlash over his Instagram post. You can read more at WAT.com. Chances are most people know exactly what we're talking about. So, Courtney, first of all, let me start off with you on this. Your thoughts, first of all, on how all this played out, and then the no confidence vote, surviving that. Is it time to move on? Does more need to be done? What are your thoughts?
This whole situation is extraordinarily unfortunate for a couple of reasons. First, the lieutenant governor said he's trying to be more affirming and understanding of the LGBTQ community. And instead of celebrating that and embracing that, and at the very least tolerating that, you've got people from both sides of the aisle who are lambasting him over that. And it really shows the hypocrisy of the Republican Party, especially in Tennessee, when that happens, because then on the other side, you've got folks who are supporting bills that are very much against that community and make folks in the LGBTQ community, it just makes it difficult for them to live their lives. So I feel for the lieutenant governor. There hasn't been a whole lot of kindness thrown his way. There has been a lot of unkindness thrown his way. And it's just extraordinarily unfortunate. He said he was trying to be more affirming and understanding of a community, and this is how we treat him. It's just very unfortunate.
Michael, what are your thoughts then?
Well, quite honestly, I felt like I would understand the situation better after hearing Courtney's perspective, and I feel like I'm more confused than ever. Randy McNally made some comments to or with a gentleman who's 20 years old now, Franklin McClure. He was a half-naked individual who Randy McNally put fire emojis and hearts, and you make a rainy day seem like Christmas or something nonsense.
A rainy day into rainbows and sunshine. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Rainy days and sunshine. And so I'm torn. I'm trying to figure out, is this Randy McNally's way of supporting the LGBT community? So my question is, who is Randy McNally? That's where I'm thrown. If this is who he is, then yes, there should be some understanding for him. I don't see this as being his way of supporting the LGBT community. I think that this is something far more intriguing than that.
Well, listen, our personal intrigue and need for hot goss, that shouldn't weigh, his personal life should not weigh into this at all. Our need to know every single detail about everybody's life, shouldn't apply to people's personal lives.
Let me ask you guys this. As far as the image now, I mean, let's face it, SNL picked up on this. We saw this on play out on different television shows. Where does this put Tennessee in the public eye? When they see this, they see the backlash, they see the votes. How does this play out as far as how we look to the rest of the country? Courtney.
Look, I think the other bills that the Tennessee General Assembly is considering is what makes us a laughingstock of the nation. It's not Lieutenant Governor McNally. It's everything else that the Tennessee General Assembly is doing and considering that is sending a message to people in our state and across the country that we are not a very welcoming or affirming state. And that's sad. That does not reflect what the majority of Tennesseans want.
Michael, Tennessee a laughingstock? What do you think?
Well, I'm pretty sure around the country, folks are laughing at Tennessee. They are laughing at the fact that Tennessee is very restrictive in its way of looking at society and the culture that should exist in the state. What Lieutenant Governor McNally has done is he has kind of made a mockery of that commitment to having a very refined conservative culture. It's okay for him to have a private life. But again, my point is, if this was who Randy McNally was all along, I don't think it would be as big an issue as it is. But because it came out of the blue, and he's been having this exchange with this individual since that individual was 17 years old. Okay, that's another issue altogether. If that's a part of Lieutenant Governor McNally's private life, that flies in the face of the commitment that the conservative supermajority legislature has presented to the state and to the country. That is where the problem is. This came out of the blue. No one expected this to be on SNL. No one expected the lieutenant governor of the state of Tennessee to be talking about a gay man's picture on Instagram and gushing, essentially. That's it's problematic.
Let me ask you this real quick, since we're kind of on the topic here a little bit. Governor Lee, of course, signed those two pieces of legislation concerning LGBTQ. Real quick, kind of want to get your thoughts. One obviously comes into effect July 1. The other one just around the corner on April 1st. That one prohibits the adult cabaret entertainment. That is what a lot of people have labeled the anti-drag bill. Michael, let's start with you first real quick on this one. Just kind of your thoughts on these two bills, being signed by the governor, getting ready to take effect here on April and July.
Well, it's unfortunate that we have this kind of issue to confront. I really don't have a problem with cabaret shows. I don't like the idea for children to be exposed to that. And I know that Courtney has an entirely different feeling about that. From a conservative point of view, from the point of view of a parent that wants to raise a child up and allow a child to grow and develop as children should grow and develop, without some of the exposures that adults are perfectly okay with experiencing. I have a problem with there being such an extreme measure that needs to be taken to restrict it. I'm also very concerned with the way that the state is viewing gender assignment, gender designation, and care for individuals under the age of 18. The whole thing is problematic.
Courtney, government have this much play? Is it more about the parents? I mean, what were your thoughts?
No, these two bills have nothing to do with protecting children at all. They have everything to do with telling the LGBTQ community that they are not welcome and sending that message. If this was really about protecting children, we would see people having problems with having their kids go to rated R movies. And that's not it. These bills were passed by a bunch of people who have never been to a drag show, who have never experienced what it's like to have a child or a loved one struggle with their gender identity. And that lack of empathy is really sad. If we want to just simply talk about the drag shows, I've been to, I don't even know how many. I've never seen a child at one, primarily because they happen after 8 o'clock at night, sometimes after 11, and they're not cheap to go to. So if you don't want your child to go to a drag show, don't give them $60 to purchase a ticket.
All right. And on that, we're going to take a break real quick. Stay with us. We have more of Tennessee this week after the break. All right, welcome back to Tennessee This Week. I'm Bo Williams, again, joined by Courtney Piper and Michael Covington. Again, guys, great to have you here. We're going to change things up here a little bit. We're going to talk about Knoxville City Council passing the resolution opposing changes to city elections. Courtney, let me get your thoughts. We were talking about it in the break a little bit, so I'm going to let you start this one off. Get your thoughts and ideas.
Oh boy, Bo.
We need to add some more time on the clock.
I want to tell the Tennessee General Assembly to butt out of local government. That's what they should be doing. It's a supermajority of the Republican Party. They're supposed to be small government, and they just keep proposing these laws that are absolutely ridiculous. Elaine Davis is also the state legislature that wanted to do away with early voting, and now she wants to butt into city elections. Stay out of them. Having people who represent us at a city and also, by the way, county level that represent the entire district is good for public policy. It's good for decision making, and it's good government.
Michael, what do you think? I mean, did state government need to stay out of business of the local governments? What are your thoughts?
No, if the state government sees a need to go in and correct something that's misaligned, I think they should do that. And I also think that the Knoxville City Council should stop taking these meaningless, toothless resolutions and sending them to higher bodies. The Knoxville City Council is under the thumb of the Knoxville City Mayor. They have no real authority here locally. So why on earth would a resolution that's signed, even unanimously, going to the state, change the way the supermajority legislature feels? If you run in a primary in your district and you win the votes and hearts and minds of the individuals in your district, you should not be subject to the whims of the other 5 districts and have the other 5 districts decide who represents you in that district. I know that that whole provision was put in place to make sure that minority candidates won in their districts, but I cannot imagine how they ever thought that having the primary be within the district and then opening up the general election to the entire city that has no ties to individual districts. I've never wants to go in and rectify that. I think they should, because quite honestly, if a former or sitting mayor wants to shape the city council, they can do so by endorsing candidates in different districts. And when the elections go citywide, they can influence how different districts are represented. And I don't think that that's right.
But Michael, that is politics. And, I've got a real problem with state legislators that are in Haywood County, Hamilton County, telling me how we can run an election in the city of Knoxville. That should be up to city voters to decide how that happens.
And city voters should be able to determine who represents their district. And in Knoxville, individuals within districts cannot do that. And that's
we do
why
in the primary,
but not in the general when it matters.
All right.
And too many times, individuals who have won in the primary have lost overwhelmingly when the city-wide.
So you're telling me we've got a bunch of crybabies who have lost their election that are sad about it, and so they think that the law should change because they lost their election. Wham, wham, boo-hoo.
That is correct. Wham, bam, boo-hoo. In any other way you'd like to describe it, you're absolutely correct.
Well, maybe we should give them all participation trophies rather than changing our elections.
I'm all for that. Let the taxpayers pay for it.
Hey, let me change this up.
But make sure the districts decide the elections.
We've got just under 2 minutes here to go. Courtney, real quick, I wanted to ask you, I know you work with some companies in Oak Ridge. There's obviously now the talk of the new nuclear reactor. Kind of your take on all of that. This is coming out just recently. So real quick, let me get your 2 cents.
Yeah, this is really exciting. There is a big mainstream trend to decarbonize the utility industry, and KUB is at the leading edge of that when it comes to nuclear energy and nuclear power. And because of that, we've been able to build a rather robust economic development situation in East Tennessee and around Oak Ridge to support that. Ever since TVA started making these commitments, we had companies starting to trickle in, and I think those companies are now at about 26. And these are 26 companies with extraordinarily high-paying jobs that are doing really technical work that can make a real impact on society. So it's going to take a lot of different technologies to decarbonize the utility sector, and it's great that TVA is really leaning into all 3 parts of their mission, which is economic development, job creation, economic development and job creation, environmental stewardship, and power generation.
Michael, under a minute, your thoughts, nuclear power.
I'll be quick. If it lowers or normalizes my utility bill, if it prevents rolling blackouts in the middle of a holiday season, I'm all for it. And I think ultimately that will happen. But that's important for the actual resident. What's most important is the utility bill not continuing to rise exorbitantly, and making sure that when it is 5 degrees outside, there's power.
All right. Mm-hmm. And on that, we're going to wrap it up. Michael, Courtney, thank you so very much for joining us. And thank you for joining us for this week on Tennessee This Week.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting.